Let's start off. Was this election a success?
Yeah, I would say bottom line up front, from a security point of view, firstly, the 2010 parliamentary elections, actually the first one in Afghanistan since 2001 under Afghan lead, they went well. That's what the Afghans say, who were responsible for security. And ISAF praises those who participated, organized and secured the parliamentary elections, and credit goes to mainly the Afghan National Security Forces. It was an honor for us to support our Afghan partners, and from today on we are ready to also support the results process.
Is there a sense that this was a free and fair election?
Yeah, I would say so. You know, there are a couple of difficulties of all sorts, and security, of course, was a concern, and of course still is a concern. It's not a question of the 18th of September only. But let me give you some facts and figures. I just only a couple of minutes ago I got a fact sheet from our operations center, and let me quote just a few points here. The number of insurgent initiated attacks this year were less than the last election and far less significant. This year we had 294 insurgent attacks compared with close to 500 in 2009 at the presidential elections. Out of those 294 attacks this year, only 34 were effective. Less than 1% of polling centers experienced violence. Out of 5,355 open polling centers, there were 38 attacks. In other words, now, when it comes to fraud, when it comes to allegations of all sorts, we have to say, from a security point of view, that enabling the Afghan National Security Forces and have ourselves ready and stand by providing security and safety, this is the best way to counter any attempt to, to disrupt the elections and to come up with fraud.
What is your sense in terms of security surrounding the elections? How much of a problem was it with polls not being able to open, and what kind of threat did people who voted in Afghanistan face? Well,
the major reason for having a security-wise, well-organized, prepared and executed election day yesterday was the fact that 4 weeks in advance, actually on the 18th of August, the Independent Electorate Committee came up with the list of the polling centers. And that enabled the Afghan National Security Forces and ourselves in close coordination to develop and rehearse very well, robust security plans. And that was kind of, the secret for yesterday's good security situation. But yes, there is violence. We had a huge number of incidents yesterday. They were not all election related, but we are still here with around about 125,000 ISAF troops, plus around about 200,000 Afghan National Army and policemen, and we need them. We need them to challenge Taliban, Haqqani and Hik insurgents and enemies in areas, particularly in the south, where they haven't been challenged for a couple of years. That's actually what we have to do, and there's no alternative to it. And we will continue doing that until by the end of 2014, the Afghan National Security Forces will actually then be able to take over the responsibility for security in their country.
What is the sense there about turnout in the election, and is that important?
Well, in a certain sense, voter turnout is important. So far, we don't have a good feel for it. There are, first estimates, but this is more the portfolio, of the Independent Election Committee. ISAF was in a supporting role for security, obviously, but yes, you say, the voter turnout is not the only and not the prime indicator for measuring success of these elections. It's, from my point of view, much more important to see that the Afghan population regard these elections as credible. And I think if you compare that with the last parliamentary elections in 2005, this time people do feel that these elections and the results are less fraudulent, they are more credible, they trust the system, they trust the organization. And by the way, you also have to look at the fact that yesterday we saw 35 elections actually in 34 provinces, and one election for the Kuchi tribe, the nomads, a very important minority in this country. And the results then in a couple of days or weeks will show that in provinces with significant security concerns such as Helmand or Kandahar, the turnout will obviously be lower than in provinces like say Farah or Gore or Bamiyan and others, where we have got a better security situation. So turnout is important, but it's not the only indicator.
How can you measure voters' confidence in an election other than looking at turnout?
One is the fact that we had around about 2,500 candidates for only 249 seats. So this shows, and by the way, close to 500 female candidates among these. That shows, first of all, that people rely on this very important democratic mechanism. They show interest. They want to participate in this process. They want to develop. They want to, they want to take part in the organization of this country's future, first of all. And then, yes, voter turnout is a point. And then thirdly, it's security. It's the way people, come up to the polling stations, line up, and don't get frustrated, even in cases, and we had these cases yesterday, Taliban and enemy forces of all sorts attacked polling centers. Then they were fought off by the Afghan National Security Forces, and the election process continued, which is very good news. In other words, things have matured a lot. People show more interest. And I think the turnout and of course the actual results themselves will prove that these elections mark a considerable development and step forward if you compare these with the last elections in this country.
There's a lot of focus in the United States about the policy review that President Obama will be conducting in December. How do you see this election impacting that review? What's the significance of it, and what will you be looking for in terms of when the results come in terms of how that may or may not impact U.S. strategy going forward?
Well, first of all, forgive me for saying that, but as an ISAF spokesperson, I don't regard a specific question like this one, which leads us into national politics, is not part of my portfolio. But it's not an American strategy only. It's a NATO strategy. It's a NATO ISAF security assistance force in this country. And we have got 47 different nations contributing forces and politics and money and effort of all sorts to ISAF in this country. And from an ISAF perspective, I suggest that these elections, as I said, mark a development and a positive development and a step forward in the overall peace and reintegration and reconciliation process of this country, against the background of a regional context always. And I think yesterday has been really a good day for Afghanistan and for all of us.